Hey folks, so it's Saturday afternoon. I'm here in my Brooklyn apartment, and I've got my friend George Earhart with me, and we thought we might just have a little chat about an individual who I think is by far the most interesting candidate in the Democratic primary for president so far. Now, I'm not endorsing him at all, and actually, there are some of his policies and proposals that are very disturbing to me. I'm talking about Andrew Yang with the universal basic income. He's running, and I'm not endorsing him at all. But at the same time, he is the most interesting. The things he's said are far more interesting than the other candidates. So I figured George and I would kind of talk about what's interesting about this Andrew Yang character. What do you think, George?
Well, I think UBI in some ways is more interesting than Andrew Yang. In some ways, Andrew Yang is more interesting than UBI. UBI may have a life beyond Yang, though Yang has certain particulars about beyond even that. His platform is very interesting. And I noticed the right wing was getting into Yang, and I started to in some way think a little bit the way they were thinking about these memes. And I thought in terms of political ideology. I give you three examples, slightly humorous, but people talk, like I know Trotskyists, they talk about Trotsky versus Stalin. Americans, no one in America knows who Leon Trotsky is almost. I bet a surprising number of people don't know who Joseph Stalin is. Almost everyone in America knows what $1,000 is. Another example, far right, National Socialism. Now imagine I was a magical Aryan, which I'm not, if these things even exist. If I were to cut myself and spill my magical Aryan blood on soil, it would not grow $1,000. And anarchism, very simple example, abolish the state. I was at Occupy, I heard this all the time. Who the hell is going to give me $1,000? That's enough being humorous. The idea is important, though, because it's simple enough and it's subtle enough to change our politics.
The thing about Andrew Yang that I think is interesting and probably makes him a big shift in American politics is that it's being pointed out that his campaign is not about him as a person, but rather about his ideas. He's campaigning on ideas. And he articulated three basic points in his program, all of which are economic. Number one, he says he wants this universal basic income, this freedom dividend. Everyone gets $1,000 a month from the government. He says, no matter what your income is, you get a check or a bank transfer of $1,000 every month, no questions asked. That's his first plank. His second plank that he's listing is he wants single-payer national health insurance, basically. You're going to have the hospitals stay private, but one insurance plan in which everyone's medical care is paid for, kind of like Bernie Sanders. And his third plank is to declare, to create this measurement of the economy. So, instead of having GDP growth as the measurement, he wants to measure, the life expectancy of people, medical care, the average income, quality of life. He wants to create this economic measurement system that'll determine how good the lives of the American people are. And when I heard about that, what struck me about it was that if he were able to do those three things, if he were able to start giving everyone $1,000 a month, if he was able to basically make sure that everyone had health care no matter what, single payer, and then on top of that, he created this measurement, he could become a very, very powerful leader very, very quickly. Because if you think about it, right, all kinds of people are going to be like, he saved me from poverty, right? I used to have to worry what would happen if I lost my job or whatever, but now everyone's getting $1,000 a month. There's going to be lots of people who feel like he saved them. Same with healthcare. There's going to be a lot of people who feel like, whoa, I was so worried about how I was going to pay my bills. And then he's created this economic measurement which gives him the ability to come back every year or every few months and say, look, this is what I've done to raise the standard of living, or this is what I need to do. And he can basically ram through any other economic measures he wants to do on the basis of, look, I have this measurement that shows people are living longer, people are living shorter, and that gives him a lot of power. And the fact that he's running on a platform of these are my ideas, these are my specific economic proposals, and he's basically creating some that if he enacted them, he would be very, very powerful, makes him, I would say, on the one hand, probably the most potentially good candidate, but also at the same time the most potentially bad candidate, right? Because if you think about that, if you create that level of power for yourself, you are able to have an army of people that are loyal to you. That on the one hand, you could do lots of great good, on the other hand, you could do lots of great evil. Now, as far as the universal basic income, I have some concerns about it, which are standard leftist concerns. He didn't invent this. This idea of universal basic income, UBI, has been around for a long time. And it's been pointed out that a lot of the people who advocate it are not leftists at all. Milton Friedman, for example, proposed a universal basic income. Milton Friedman, the godfather of neoliberalism.
Ezra Pound.
Free to choose. Who else was a big supporter of universal basic income? Well, Nixon talked about it for a long time. He never was able to implement it. I think at one point he advocated universal basic income for every family that had more than 3 children, and ultimately he couldn't get it through. But a lot of far right-wing people. I saw Charles Murray, the guy who wrote The Bell Curve, the racial pseudoscience book that was popular in the 1980s. I read an article in the Wall Street Journal a couple years ago where he was advocating a universal basic income. And the thing is, and Andrew Yang has said this, the idea is everyone would get $1,000 a month, right? But here's the thing, right? The idea is that then you would gradually fade out all the other social programs, right? So right now, people get Section 8 rent assistance. They get food stamps. They get, single mothers. They get assistance, I believe, with baby powder and such. And
nutritional
assistance, and there's all kinds of social programs that exist. And you have unemployment insurance, for example, and you have disability for people who can't work. All of these programs, he's saying, would be gotten rid of, right? And that at first it would be voluntary, and it would be you can keep getting these social programs, or you can get your freedom dividend. And of course, your $1,000 a month is going to be more. In order for this to work, it would have to be more than what you would get from these social programs. So you get rid of all the people that handle unemployment insurance, all the people that handle Social Security and disability, all the people that handle food stamps. Those are thousands and thousands of good-paying government jobs right there, right? So you're axing the bureaucracy. And government workers are unionized. They have public sector unions. They tend to have higher wages. Those are lots of people. And yes, everyone's getting their $1,000 a month into the economy, but all these people that were making far more than that, gone, right? So that's one danger. And then the other thing is, and this was pointed out to me, I discussed it, I don't want to say the name, but with a rather prominent Marxist economist in the United States who was hanging around. I was in the same place he was, and we had a chat about it. It was pointed out to me that what Andrew Yang says, you have to always put into the context of the American political environment, right? Andrew Yang says everyone will get it. Even criminals will get it. They go to prison. Once they're out of prison, they'll get it. Everyone in the whole country will get this universal basic income. But here's the problem. We live in the United States of America, right? And we all know that there are certain people that are universally unliked, like, say, convicted pedophiles, or terrorists or whatever, right? So in some state, all it has to do, you got some conservative politician, and they're going to come along and they're going to say, okay, this guy, Joe Bob, is a convicted pedophile. He served 15 years in prison. He's out of prison. Now we, the taxpayers, are giving a convicted pedophile, $1,000 a month. Of course, everyone's going to be against that. It's indefensible. No one's going to be like, yeah, I want to give $1,000 of my tax money to this convicted pedophile who's committed this horrible crime. So then they're going to pass a law in South Carolina and Alabama and Ohio and Texas and probably all throughout the country that certain people don't get this. And on the surface, that might sound fine. We don't want to support these people, except you've already gotten rid of food stamps. You've already gotten rid of disability. You've already gotten rid of any cash assistance. So these people basically have nothing, right? And they're destitute on the street. And you're going to have a lot of people that we basically, and it'll start with the most undesirable people you can think of, but I can see it eventually coming to anyone who's committed a crime, anybody who, and pretty soon we're going to have a list of undesirable people who don't get anything. And it's not that they don't get $1,000 a month, they get nothing, because all the other programs have been gotten rid of. And you can start socially engineering in a very effective way, and that worries me a lot too. Another thing that was raised is that there will be some people that will just get this $1,000 a month. They don't have any desire to go anyplace in life. The idea that people are just going to not work, that's absurd. And the right wing is putting that out there. Oh, people will just not work. Most people will work, but there'll be some people that just won't, right? Maybe they're disabled, maybe they just have no aspirations. So they're not going to work. And those people are going to be the most hated people. And it's going to be, we give you $1,000 a month and you do nothing for our society. And the resentment against those people is going to be massive. And there's going to be constant pushes to lower their freedom dividend, to suppress them. It's going to happen, and it creates kind of a group of people that could be marginalized, the people that are just going to get their check, and it lays the basis for all kinds of weird stuff. And ultimately, a lot of people that advocate neoliberal free market capitalism love universal basic income. So I got questions about it, but what I like about it is what I said before, that that Andrew Yang is saying, look, I'm running on a platform of how I will fix the economy, how I will make the lives of Americans better. That's what all politicians should be running on. Politics shouldn't be a dog and pony show. You shouldn't be voting for someone to be your best friend. You should be voting for somebody who will make your life better, whose job it is to oversee the economy, right? You get sick, you want a good doctor who knows how to administer medical assistance to you, right? We should have people in the government who know how to run the government, right? That's what we should vote. We should vote for them. We know that they can run the government the best. Politics in the United States has degenerated to the point that we want people to be our friends. We want people to put on a show for us. But the idea that somebody might know how to administer the government well, that doesn't appeal to us. We should think of politics like any other profession. But that said, he is the most interesting candidate. And a lot of people are going on, well, he's not a socialist. You're right about that. He is definitely not a socialist, right? I mean, universal basic income and socialism are not the same thing. And that's what the right wing tells everyone that socialism is. Socialism is the government giving people free stuff. No, it's not. Socialism is when the banks, factories, and industries operate not according to profits, but in the interest of public good. And I think that needs to be said as well.
I share most of your concerns, and there's a logic to them, but to me, basically, the elimination of a certain kind of scarcity, from everything I know, is that it would lessen the kind of tensions that leads to the ostracism of people, the scapegoating. Mm-hmm. And I think that kind of economics would actually, the ball would be in the left's court to enact a more socialist program. I think it would empower people to pursue that path. They would be wealthy enough to be so. And the danger about the jobs, there is a kernel of truth to the right-wing perspective that if certain social services are less efficient, mm-hmm. they should go away. The social benefit shouldn't go away, but things should be rearranged. And what is socialism is eventually the desire to put us all out of work so we can pursue our own paths in life, individually, collectively. So I think there's a lot of possibilities with it for the left.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm definitely not endorsing the man, as you just heard. I have all these concerns about his proposal, but I'm not opposed to him completely either. And there are things about him I really like. I mean, he's an interesting candidate, far more interesting than any other candidate, I will say, right? He's not a congressman. He's not a senator. He's not a Democrat. He's not selling his personality. He's saying, look, I have 3 basic proposals to make life better in the country. If you want them, vote for me. And in reality, that's what that's what politics is supposed to be. I mean, great example is Vladimir Putin in Russia, right? Vladimir Putin wrote his PhD doctoral dissertation on the concept of national champions. He wrote, look, Russia, Soviet Union fell, we're a deeply poor country now, all of a sudden our economy's been ripped apart and people are hungry on the streets and it's a mess, but we have a huge amount of oil and gas. So I am going to create Gazprom and Rosneft, 2 giant mega corporations, and I'm going to use them to reboot our economy. He writes this as his PhD doctoral dissertation. He announces he's running for president on a platform of, I've got this PhD thesis to fix our economy. People voted for him. He won the election. It took him a while, but he did it, right? And that's why Vladimir Putin is so popular. And I've seen it. I've been to Russia. I've talked to people. The reason people like Vladimir Putin is because he came into office and he made their lives better. He made their lives better, period. I mean, he came in, he created Gazprom, he created Rosneft. He used them to stimulate the economy, and now people in Russia, compared to the way things were in the 1990s, when they just had utter chaos and drug gangs and mass suicides, and I believe, according to one statistic, the population of Russia during the 1990s actually went down by 10%. Now, that wasn't all mass death. A lot of it was just people leaving. But free market neoliberal capitalism, brought to you by Jeffrey Sachs, the IMF economist, the World Bank guy who now is out of Columbia University and at this point is actually a Sanders supporter, that's a weird conversation in itself. But Jeffrey Sachs was there and they just demolished Russia. And Putin ran for president on a platform of, I'm going to fix the economy, and I have a method, and I wrote this paper, this very well, and this paper, I mean, he quotes Adam Smith, he quotes Karl Marx, he quotes different economic theories, not Marxism at all, not socialism, but just kind of what is this concept of a national champion? I'm going to reboot the economy by taking these measures. He got elected, and it took him a while. He wasn't able to do it immediately. It took him a long time to really give Gazprom and Rosneft the level of hegemony that they have, but he was able to do it. And that's why Putin is such an effective leader in Russia, because he did these things. So, again, that's how politics is supposed to be. You're supposed to have people who understand how to make life better in the country, they get elected, and they enact their program making life better in the country. In the United States, it's become a battle of personalities. It's become an American Idol TV special. It's become a dog and pony show and a popularity contest, and it's become a place for nothing to get done. And I will say that, we have this gridlock in the United States now, and it's almost the perfect setup. Nobody has to do anything. If you're a Democrat, you can get in there and you can blame everything on the Republicans, and if you're a Republican, you can get in there and you can blame everything on the Democrats. Nobody has to do anything. You just talk about the other side and how odious they are, and you don't have to actually deliver the goods, and it's perfect. And every time you can come back to your constituents and say, well, the other guys stopped me from doing it. It's the perfect setup for disaster and for not doing anything, and for the conditions in the country overall getting worse.
Well, you touched on that, the personality aspect of American politics, but also a kind of instrumental obsession, where basically every game can be a tie, as long as it's played just right. We follow just the right procedure, and that's as much as you can expect from politics, is sort of the idea. And somehow I think the UBI breaks that a little bit. That, basically giving people, it's uniting something, it's going into a crass aspect of American culture. It's getting a little bit away from identity politics. Black, white, brown, yellow. Americans can unite around green.
Mm-hmm.
That's something I think basically that in some way would give people a participation, because they don't want to lose green.
Yeah.
They'll lose anything else. And I've noticed this, and usually this is something that people I would consider kind of substandard in their intellect in life would tell me, that they worship green. They were right, I was wrong. That's what they do. So I actually think in some ways it would pump blood into our politics.
Yeah, and again, his campaign is like no other. Now, let's remember that Pat Buchanan ran for president in the 1990s, 1996. He ran for president on a platform of, I'm going to build a wall between the USA and Mexico. He was a third-party candidate, Reform Party, didn't get votes, didn't happen. Obviously, he wasn't going to win, but he wasn't a Republican either. He was running on a Reform Party platform. But that was kind of throwing the flag out there, seeing who would like it. And we now have Trump, who won the presidency on the basis of, I'm going to build a wall between the USA and Mexico. And it was kind of like you had to have Pat Buchanan kind of throw the idea out there before you could actually have it enter mainstream discourse. And it seems to me that, this UBI idea, it might not be Andrew Yang who eventually carries it out. He might run a campaign around it. He might be, putting it up the flagpole and seeing who salutes. And that later, give it a decade or so, maybe the Democratic Party will make that part of their platform. Maybe it's something they think is better, right? And that's kind of the divide between liberals and conservatives when it comes to the ruling elite. I'm not talking about the people in the rank and file of the parties. But I feel like, the old money, the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, the DuPonts, the Morgans, they feel like, look, we want to have social order. And if that means we have to pay more taxes, that means we have to write everyone a check for $1,000 a month, we have no protests in the streets, our profits are rolling in, there's no danger to our system, it's worth it. Whereas you have the conservative element that says, no, we want unregulated everything, we want to cut into our profits, and we don't like that the government is involved because the government's going to rig it for the richest of the rich. And that divide goes on. And I can see a faction of the richest of the rich in the United States who think, look, we can write every American a check for $1,000 a month, and they'll shut up, and there won't be any social protests, and there's no danger to our system, and we can get everything back in order, and we can start pummeling Russia down, we can start pummeling China again, we can overthrow the Bolivarians of Venezuela, everyone will be happy here, we won't have any problems on our home front, fine. $1,000 check, we'll do it. I can see that. I can see that as being a sentiment among the old money, the entrenched power, the folks that are always talking social engineering. I'm talking like the people who brought us Brzezinski, the people who brought us Henry Kissinger, the really, really entrenched circles of power, ExxonMobil, the Ford Foundation, the Council on Foreign Relations, those folks are long-term thinking, And they are open to things that might seem somewhat painful but would save the existing social order. Whereas the lower levels of American capital, they just want to make money. They believe all this free market stuff, that if you just privatize everything and the government does nothing, that we'll all get rich because that's how capitalism is just this amazing system. They believe all that junk, right? Betsy DeVos, the lower levels of American capital, the nouveau riche, they've only been rich for a generation or two. They actually believe all the free market rhetoric that we get hand-fed in the United States. They believe this stuff, and they think if it were just carried out, it would be true. But I think that among the richest of the rich, the people who commissioned the work of B.F. Skinner, the people who, promoted, the Kinsey Report, for example, the 1950s, the liberal, the New England families, a lot of them are in New England, the New England liberal establishment that likes George Soros, those folks who I really think are probably the more effective evil in U.S. politics, right? The liberal wing of American capital, not the Bernie Sanders people, not the young people that really want to make a better country and believe in, social democracy. I'm talking about the people that run the Hillary Clinton wing of the Democratic Party. I think a lot of them are thinking we're in a crisis right now, and if we can just write everyone $1,000 a month and everyone will shut up and everything will go back to normal in the United States, it's worth it. Do you think I'm onto something?
I think the class analysis is, I'd agree with just about all of that. I think that's about spot on.
Yeah.
At this point, I think it's something that it's just sort of the way things have taken shape, that I think the American people are pummeled enough that they can see what Yang is talking about the malls closing, about this closing, about that closing, that the kind of education they have, they're ambivalent a large number about socialism. But when he talks about capitalism that doesn't start at zero, I think they're at about the right place. They've been beaten up enough that if they can't walk away from capitalism, that's seductive. For a lot of the people, a lot of Republicans, a lot of people that the media would not think would be interested in that idea. So I think it has legs in those terms.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to watch this campaign. The Andrew Yang campaign is going to be the most interesting campaign of all. I don't predict he will win, but I predict it'll be interesting and it'll start an interesting conversation for sure. So, on that note, let's keep watching the campaign. Maybe we'll have another conversation as things go on.
I think he's a dark horse.
Very possible. I don't rule it out. Politics in the USA are changing very rapidly these days, for sure.